Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. So in today's class, I'm going to teach you how to be able to create databases and be able to delete databases on your MySQL database server. I'm also going to show you how to see what privileges your particular user account has, simply to verify that you have the permission to be able to delete or be able to create databases on the server. That is an important thing to remember, again, when you're thinking about the technology world and we're thinking about security, is that security comes in multiple different levels, right? So basically, if you're talking about the network, you have security in the network with things like firewalls to prevent hackers from coming in on certain ports. On the operating system itself, you have file and folder permissions saying what user accounts can do. But within MySQL, there are also user accounts there, and those user accounts have certain permissions. So things such as being able to create databases, being able to delete databases, being able to insert rows, insert records, that type of thing. Those are all different permissions that you can either assign to users or be able to deny to users. So I'm going to show you the show grants command just to verify if you're going in and you're trying to create a database or delete a database and you run into some kind of access denied issue, just to be able to do the show grants and see if you have the permissions to do what you think you're supposed to be able to do. So today I'm going to show you how to create and delete the databases and also how to look at what your privileges are. So, as I said in the previous video, and I'm sure I will say in many more videos in this series, warning, warning, Will Robinson, a warning, a warning. So for this whole MySQL series, I'm probably going to have to do a lot of warnings just to explain to you folks, especially any of the old timers out there. I may be trying to teach things in something that may seem like a bit of a convoluted way, but I'm actually trying to teach this in what I think will be the simplest way for people to learn. So when we go in today and we actually start dealing with the databases, we're going to create a database, delete a database, and show grants. We're going to be logging in simply using the sudo command for MySQL. So we're going to use sudo MySQL, and that will drop us in as literally the root level user for the MySQL server. I'm doing that because I have not yet shown you how to create user accounts within MySQL, and I don't actually want to do that class until a few classes down the road, right? So when you have user accounts, you also have privileges, basically security permissions within MySQL. And so what I want to do is I want to show you how to create a database, then I want to show you how to create tables, then I want you to show you how to insert records. Then what I want to do is then go and show you how to create a user account and then be able to give that user account specific permissions. And then with those permissions, you can go in and see what you're able to or not be able to do. So basically today, what I'm going to be showing you in this is how to go in, again, using sudo MySQL. That will drop us in at the root level for MySQL. That will allow us to create a database. It will allow us to delete a database. It will allow us to do this show grants command. I will actually also create a user account just to kind of give you a bit of an example there, but we're not actually going to be learning how to create users accounts in this class. I'm just going to use it as an example. So if you get a little bit confused, like you're sitting here going, well, wait a minute, why do we keep logging in under sudo MySQL instead of MySQL space -u space user account space -p is how you normally should do it. The reason I'm doing it is just, again, it's that whole, when you're teaching technology, it's trying to, there's so many subjects you have to kind of try to teach at once, and so trying to figure out how to position all of those things can be a bit complicated. So also, if you're following along with this particular class and you have a user account that has all privileges for a database server, by all means log in using that particular account. Again, MySQL space -u space user account space -p. That will log you in. That's the normal way to log in, but for the people following along at home, they just created their lab setup. We're going to be using sudo MySQL, again, just because it's, the simplest way of trying to explain all of this stuff to new people. So here we are at my MySQL lab server that I've created. So I figure that going with Ubuntu Desktop 18.04, again, the desktop that uses the graphical user interface, that will be the best way to go for these particular classes. Again, I have this running in a virtual machine on VirtualBox on my MacBook Pro, but if you install this directly onto bare metal, that would be fine too. So with that, let's go down. click on the little show applications, then you go up into the search and you type terminal, and then you click on terminal and you get your fancy little terminal here. So from this point, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to log into MySQL. And so what we're going to do is sudo MySQL. Right? Again, if you have a normal user account already, what you would do is you do MySQL space -u space account name space -p, and that is how you would normally log into MySQL, but that will be for the future. That will be for the future. Right now, this is how we're going to log in. It's going to ask me for the password, super secret, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 password, hit enter, and there you go. I do have to say, one of the nice things about running MySQL on a local machine versus learning this stuff up on some kind of cloud hosting provider is that you can do things like have really crappy security, because when I'm done with this class, I literally shut off the virtual machine, and therefore it is not a security vulnerability for my network or for my systems, right? So if I deploy MySQL up onto a cloud server, I use really crappy usernames, really crappy passwords. I connect some PHP scripts to it, right? A hacker might be able to find that and be able to have a lot of fun at your expense. One of the nice things about spinning this up locally is, again, as soon as I am finished with this class or my lab or whatever I'm doing, I literally turn off the virtual machine and there is no longer a vulnerability there. So just one of those things to be thinking about. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to use a command, show databases. So show databases, this will show us the databases that already exist on this particular MySQL server. So you type in show databases and semicolon. Always semicolon, never forget the semicolon. And then you hit enter. And so here we can see what databases we currently have. So databases, we have something called the information schema, the MySQL database. This actually has all the MySQL user accounts, configurations, that type of thing. More or less, these are the databases you don't screw with. You don't screw with. You go in and you see another database, screw with the other databases. Don't muck with these ones. You screw with these, and it's kind of like screwing with the registry. Again, if you're dealing with Windows PCs and you go in and you just start screwing around with the registry, you might crash your system. That's how these are. Don't screw with those unless you know what the hell you're doing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to simply create a database, which is oh so complicated. So all we do is we do create, and then we simply say database. And then we do a space, and then whatever our database name is. So we'll simply do test, let's say test DB, and then I will have to do a semicolon, because you always got to do the semicolon. Then you hit enter, query OK, one row affected, blase, blase, blase. If we go then in, and we simply say show databases again, semicolon, hit enter. We can now see we have the databases, information schema, MySQL, performance schema, sys, and test DB. So now we have that database. So if we wanted to start adding tables, and then within the tables, want to start adding records, that type of thing, we would now do that within test DB. So basically, if you're going to start using test DB, you would simply do use, and then test DB, and then do semicolon, and then that would drop you into test DB itself. And so really, that is all there is for creating a database. That is literally it. It doesn't ask you if you want to do it. You don't have to do any additional verifications. You have simply created it. So now, if you want to be able to delete a database, basically all you do is the drop command. So you do drop space database space and then test DB semicolon, of course, because there's always a semicolon. Hit enter. Okay, it's done. Now this is where you got to be careful, boys and girls. This is gonna be careful. Did you notice it didn't ask you if you wanted to do it? It didn't verify if you want to do it. It didn't say, hey, have you done a backup of your entire CRM? It just did it. So do remember, MySQL is a backend for scripting languages, for again, like PHP or the other scripting languages out there. And so they don't want to have to put acknowledgments in there because then you'd actually have to script for it, right? You just want to be able to write a script that will put stuff in, pull stuff out, create databases, delete databases, that type of thing. And so one of the issues you can run into is when you're coming in and you're doing manual maintenance, if you fat finger something, you could wipe out the entire back-end database for your CRM solution literally as quick as 0.000 seconds. So again, do be very careful. And again, when we're talking about security and things, make sure you always have backups, because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of problems. And so that is literally all you have to do in order to create a database and delete a database, right? So we go and we do show databases again, semicolon, hit enter. When you see, we get back to the standard databases that we had before. Okay, so now I want to show you the show grants command. So this is going to show you the privileges for the current user that is logged in, right? To make sure that you are supposed to have the ability to be able to do things like create databases and delete databases. So with that, what we're going to do is we're simply going to type in show grants, and that is the entire command, semicolon, of course. And what this is going to do is this is going to show the permissions, the privileges, the grants for the currently logged in user. So I'm currently logged in as a local or root at localhost. And what we can see here is I have a grant all privileges. So I have all privileges, all permissions on, and then you see this star here. Basically, when we're looking at star, as far as naming conventions go, the first star is for the database, the second star is for the table. So yesterday when we were dealing with the user table and the MySQL database, if we wanted to be able to reference that, we would do MySQL user. And so that would be the user table in the MySQL database. So what we're saying here is grant all privileges on star all databases all tables to root at localhost. And then it also has the with grant option. So basically what this means is I am able to then give grant privileges to other user accounts. So this shows you basically what permissions your current user has. So if you log in, you go to create a database, you go to drop a database, and for some reason you're not able to do it, you get an access denied, you can simply do show grants, and you will see what privileges, what grants you actually have. So with that, what we're going to do now is just a little bit of extra credit. Do not feel like you have to take any notes or anything. We are going to talk about this kind of stuff more in the future. We'll have a specific class on creating users and all that kind of thing in the future, but I just kind of want to give you an overview of this show grants thing now. So with that, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a database again. So create a database, and we're just going to recreate testDB, semicolon. Okay, one row affected. We go back to show databases. And okay, so we can now see that we've got the normal default, and then we have the test database there. The next thing that I'm going to do is clear the screen. So I like clearing the screen in order to teach you folks how this is done. It makes life a little bit easier. For me, on this particular computer, if I type Control L, that will clear the screen for me. For you, on your particular system, you may just have to do a bit of a Google search, but try Control L. At first, try Control L, and then from there, do a Google search if you need to clear the screen. So now that we have the test database, we're going to create a user, be able to give that user some privileges so that we can then use the show grants command to see what privileges that particular user has. Again, do not feel like you have to take any notes at home. So what we're going to do is we're going to create user. And again, one of the things you're going to start noticing is that there's similar syntax for everything within MySQL. Again, any application that you're going to use in the technology world, there's a similar syntax throughout the entire application. So within MySQL, create obviously creates databases, creates tables, creates users. Drop is what you use to delete users, delete databases, delete tables. So that's just one thing just to keep in mind. If you're like, how do I delete something? Just remember, you almost always use drop. So we're going to use create user, and then we're going to create a user called Tim. So single quotation mark, Tim, close single quotation mark, identified make sure I spelled that right, by, so basically what this is saying, with a password of 123456, right? So again, don't worry about taking notes, we'll do all this later, but so we're creating a user, single quotation marks, Tim, close single quotation marks, identified by, this says, and with a password of, single quotation mark, 123456, close single quotation mark, and then semicolon. And then we are going to hit enter, and then we see query OK, 0 rows affected in 000 seconds. So that's all we had to do to create the user account. And now what we're going to do is we're going to give that user account Tim permissions. So we're going to give him the permission to be able to insert on the test database. Don't worry about all this. Again, we'll talk about this later. I just want to be able to show this to you so we can use that show grants thing in a second. So we're going to grant the insert permission, basically be able to insert records into a table. And so we're going to say insert on testdb dot star here. So grant the insert permission on the test database for all tables, right? And then we're going to say space 2, and then we're going to say Tim, and then we're going to do semicolon. So this is going to grant those permissions to Tim. And then we get query OK, 0 rows affected, blah, 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 blah. So now one of the things we can do is we can now see what permissions another user has within MySQL, right? So if I do show grants right now, and I do semicolon, that is going to show me what privileges I have. So if you do show grants, and then we do for, and then whatever the username is. So we're going to say show grants for Tim, and then we do semicolon, and we hit enter. We now see what privileges, what grants Tim has. So Tim, this Tim account has the grant usage. So basically it's able to use, so grant all privileges. So the root account has all privileges on star.star. Basically for Tim, it has the usage permission on star.star, so everything, and then it has the insert on testdb.star, right? So that is the permissions that Tim actually has. So from here, what we can do is we can exit out and we can actually log in as Tim and then try to create a table and see what happens. So with that, we'll type exit, so this will log us out. So we are now logged out of MySQL, and we will now log back in. So let me just clear the screen real quick. Okay, so now we're up here, and so the normal way you will log in to MySQL is MySQL space -u with that new user account Tim space -p. So this is the normal way that you would log in. And then you hit enter, asks you for the password, and then you hit enter. And yay, you're logged in. Okay, so what if I want to create a database like new DB, right? And then I do a semicolon. So create database, new DB. So I'm simply creating a database, just like I was before. Now I hit enter. Ooh, error, Will Robinson. Access denied for Tim to database new DB. And then I'm like, huh, why is that? So I can do show grants, like I did before, semicolon, and then I can go, oh, I only have the insert privilege on testDB for all the tables on testDB. I don't have the ability to create a database within this particular MySQL server, and so I need to go and ask the administrator or figure something else out if I have to be able to create a database. So that is just a basic explanation there of how you can create a database, you can drop a database, and then you can see the privileges to see if you have the right to either create or delete a database within MySQL. And so there you go. Now you know how to create a database, delete a database, and be able to see privileges. Now you probably don't realize this at home because hopefully I did those jump cuts pretty well, but I do have to say, there were a lot of jump cuts in that video. One of the things that you run into in the MySQL world, again, kind of like with Linux or anything else, is if you don't type in everything perfectly, the command doesn't work. So don't get frustrated. Don't get frustrated if you're home, you're trying to type in the commands and you keep screwing up the commands. Even us professionals do too. The difference between me and you is I get to jump cut out all the errors. You're sitting there forced to see yours. So again, that's an important thing to realize again with MySQL. Again, really with any kind of technology you're going to be using at a command line is basically if you type in the the words perfectly, the syntax perfectly, everything will go great. If you fat finger the syntax, you can have problems. So when I was creating that Tim account, again, identified, I don't know, I just kept screwing up identified by. Identified space by, yeah, I fat fingered that like 3 or 4 times. We just jump cutted that kind of thing out. So again, this is one of those things just to realize if you're sitting there and you're typing in the commands to MySQL, just, again, take a second look, make sure you're typing in the right command. And then if it errors out, go back and redo it. The one thing that I will warn you about though, and you really do have to be careful about, is when you're doing things like deleting databases, you hit enter and the database is gone. And now I make that joke about deleting a CRM database. And you're sitting there like, yeah, some company with like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 customers or whatever, that would be a bad thing. I actually had a buddy of mine who really did do that. She'd been working about 100 hours. One of the reasons why you don't work 100-hour weeks, I know it sounds really cool. All these people like, yeah, I work 100-hour weeks. Don't work 100-hour weeks. She had been working like her second 100-hour week because they've been doing this massive migration. And no joke, what happened was they had the old database system. It's not really a server per se, but it's the old database system. They were migrating to the new database system. Oh, they had this naming convention. They had a naming convention, right? So basically what happened was they migrated all the data over. They spun up the new server, making sure everything's working right. And then the idea is basically you then kill the old server, you delete the information, the whole 9 yards. So that's not a security vulnerability. Yeah. She was sitting there at the command prompt, and she says she still remembers doing it, because that was the funny part. She said the worst part about it was she went to delete. She was supposed to delete the old database, obviously not the new database. For some reason, she literally typed in to delete the new database because her brain was just foggy. She messed up. Like when she typed in the command, she fat fingered the command. And so she actually tried to delete the new database, but failed because she fat fingered the command. She then looked at what she had done, fixed the command, and then wiped out the brand new database server. That's not a joke. And when we're talking about, again, we're not talking about 1,000 customers. They had millions of customers. She wiped out the CRM for a pretty sizable company. They were able to recover from a backup, but when you're recovering from that size of a backup, I think it took about 2 days. Basically, imagine the CRM solution for a company with millions and millions and millions of customers going bye-bye for a couple of days. That was a bad thing. And so again, when I talk about how easy it is to do something like delete a database, and it's like, oh, ha ha ha, yeah, it's not really ha ha. Oh, there's nothing so sad as watching a woman who's worked 100 hours for a couple of weeks in a row, and then she has a meltdown because she wiped out the entire database. And then it's also funny. It's really funny. What's amusing is to then see a manager. You see the manager who's sitting there and he really wants to scream at her. He really wants to say, what the hell were you thinking? But at the same time, this woman has, again, worked over 100 hours for a couple weeks in a row. So if he pushes too hard, she might just completely melt the fuck down and walk out the door. And so you get into some weird managerial supervisor like dynamics there. And again, really, the real lesson here is don't work 100 hours a week. If you are in the technology profession and you're actually doing command line stuff, don't get me wrong. If you're racking servers, work 100 hours if you want to. If you're running cable, be careful, but work 100 hours if you want to. If you're typing commands in at the command line, do not work 100-hour weeks. You start going stupid after 50 or 60 hours, and then you can do things like wipe out database for millions and millions of customers. So anyways, do be careful with that. And so that's, again, this is basically a little bit getting in, starting to get your feet wet with an actual MySQL database server. As we go on, we'll teach you how to do more things. Again, with the whole user account thing right now, having you log in as a sudo MySQL, I am simply doing this because I'm trying to figure out the best way to actually be able to teach you these steps without getting you confused at the same time. So I'm going to show you how to create the user accounts, and I'm going to show you how to do these permissions after I've shown you the how to create the database and the tables and be able to insert records. At that point, then I'll show you how to create user accounts. And I think it'll be a little bit easier. Everything will come into place a little bit better than if I created user accounts in the beginning. I think. I don't know. It's my style of teaching. We'll see how it works out. So anyways, as always, I enjoyed teaching this class, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively, and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.